there was so much potency in the early Gita, and now the argument is that since it's been edited, there's no potency. That is so bogus. You know, it's such a lot of claptrap. Personally, I can say I was one of a team of about 6 GBCs that was asked to review every single correction that Jayadvaita Maharaj proposed. I think this was in about 82. We had a meeting in Detroit, and he took permission from the GBC to make these changes, editorial changes. What he proposed brought the Bhagavad Gita back to Prabhupada's original commentaries, about as close as it's possible to get. The first 6 chapters, he actually still had Prabhupada's original type manuscript. So he had Prabhupada's exact words for the first 6 chapters. The second 6 chapters, he had the first edited version of it. So that was as close as they could get. The last 6 chapters, they didn't have anything. So they had to work on experience and comments that Prabhupada had made and whatever. But if you look at it, you know, what was there, I mean, there were so many, amazing mistakes that had been made in that early edition. Just one example, for the soul, there is neither birth nor death, nor once having been does he ever cease to be. He's unborn, he's eternal, he's undying. The first time I read that as a Bhakta, I sensed there was something wrong with it. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I had an idea what it was. You know, nor having once been, does he ever cease to be? And I was thinking, how does that make sense? I couldn't quite understand it, but I thought, anyway, the purport's very clear, so, And so that was one of the proposed editorial changes, that when Jayadvaita looked at it, he had the original translation of Srila Prabhupada's. It was nothing like that. Prabhupada said, he does not exist, what was it? He has existed in the past, he exists now, and he exists in the future. That was the idea. 3 tenses. In the Sanskrit, there's 3 specific tenses that are given. Prabhupada gave a literal translation of that. Now, Hayagriva, he actually didn't like Prabhupada's translations. This is the fact. He liked Radhakrishna's because Radhakrishna's were more poetic. And they had, in the early days in 26 Second Avenue, before they had Prabhupada's Gita, they were using Dr. Radhakrishna's Gita as a text, just to get the actual text, and then Prabhupada would talk on it. Now, he just liked, Radhakrishna's, so-called more poetic translation, but they were inaccurate. You can't, when you're talking about the eternality of the soul, you can't say that, once having being, does he ever cease to be? Because you're saying that at a certain point it comes into existence. And that's not what the Sanskrit says. The Sanskrit says, past, present, and future. He's always been. He always exists. So that was one change. When I read that, I said, oh, no. Because there was a song, for the soul, there is never birth nor death. Mangalananda. Nor having once been, does he ever cease to be. And he put it to music, and it sounds good, and we used to sing it. I said, we won't be able to sing this anymore now. But the fact is that was Prabhupada's translation, much more accurate. So, there's so many, when I went into it, I went over every single change, and I was amazed at how many mistakes were made, and I was amazed at how much stuff Hayagriva had altered or simply chopped out. Huge chunks of stuff. Even in the so-called, definitive Gita, he had chopped stuff out from the purports. The whole introduction, he just, reduced it right down because he didn't think that it was a good idea to have so many, verses from the Gita Mahatmya quoted at the end of the introduction. And then, there's the more famous things like the Planet of Trees, which every devotee that ever read that couldn't figure out, a planet of trees, what is that? Pitriloka, right? Pitriloka. So, the guy that typed that out, couldn't understand what Pitri was. He thought Prabhupada said tree. So Prabhupada said planet of the forefathers, and he thought Pitri Loka must be a planet of trees. So that's what he put. It makes us look foolish. When any Sanskrit scholar or student reads that, what is this? So, I mean, there's lots and lots of corrections that were made that bring that Gita right back to the way that Prabhupada originally wrote it. It's not possible to get another version of the Gita that's more accurate than the so-called new one of the BBT. The old one was riddled with problems. There's no doubt about it. But because Prabhupada's purports were there, that compensated for any mistakes that were there in the translations and the transliterations, etc. So, yeah, I mean, that's, completely, it was potent. The new Gita is just as potent, probably more so, because it's much more to Prabhupada's exact translations that he did himself.